I'm not telling my story to be pitied or given advice. Everything that happened is my life, and I don't need advice or pity. By nature, I'm a one-woman man. I've always taken marriage very seriously, maybe even too seriously. I never strayed from my wife because I never saw anyone else around me except my one and only. There was no need or desire for it, though I'll admit many women tried. I met my future wife in the early 90s at my friend's wedding, among the guests, and fell in love with her instantly. We dated for 6 months before deciding to marry. We had a modest wedding and were on cloud 9. For her, it was her second marriage. She had divorced her first husband a year before we met. Something hadn't worked out between them, but I never pried, believing there was no reason to dredge up painful memories. She rarely spoke of it herself. My wife was beautiful, intelligent, and an excellent homemaker. I was truly lucky. When we married, the country was in chaos and stable work was hard to come by. She was a medic working at a military base, and besides my main job, I took on side gigs to make ends meet. I wanted my family to want for nothing. From the very first day we met, I cherished her, loved her madly, literally carried her in my arms, and considered her my closest and dearest person. 2 years into our marriage, we still hadn't been able to conceive. This wounded her deeply. She was devastated and even prophesied that I'd leave her because of her infertility. She was diagnosed with blocked fallopian tubes, a crushing blow, but I never lost hope. I stood by her, comforted her, told her she was my destiny, that I loved her more than life itself, and assured her we'd do whatever it took to make her a mother. Modern medicine could work miracles. She believed me, smiled, and for that smile, I was ready to give everything just to see her happy. I worked relentlessly, driven by one goal. We needed money for tests, consultations, medications, and multiple surgeries in different clinics, even folk healers. Each time, I believed it would finally happen, that she'd get pregnant, and then we'd truly start living. But despite all our efforts, nothing worked. After nearly 5 years, she lost hope and resigned herself, but I remained an optimist. I kept believing in a miracle, and my energy gave her strength. She often told me she felt safe with me, that she could face tomorrow with confidence. I believed her because I thought she was the person I was born for, my unshakable fortress. As long as she was by my side, I could overcome anything. One day, we stumbled upon an article about in vitro fertilization, IVF. It gave us new hope, a fresh drive toward our dream. I was ready to move heaven and earth, more certain than ever that this time it would work. The procedure and recovery were expensive by my standards, so I looked for ways to earn the money. Our town was small, with few options, but then I saw an ad in a magazine. Reservists wanted for contract service, good pay, etc. Basically, they needed personnel for certain jobs in specific locations, and the pay was substantial. I'd served in the Marines during my mandatory service and was in good health. I wasn't driven by patriotism. I had no desire to die for someone's political interests, but I needed the money to achieve our goal. So, after some thought, I decided to take the risk. My wife cried and begged me not to go, terrified that if something happened to me, the money would be meaningless. I explained that we weren't born into wealthy families. Nothing in life comes for free. You have to go out and take it. I reassured her it would be fine, that we weren't doing this for luxuries but for something good. I traveled far, stayed away for long stretches, but returned with what we needed, luckily without losing my life or committing any sins. Then we went to the clinic, did the procedure, and the miracle happened, the one we'd fought for so long. She got pregnant. I was overjoyed, doting on her every second. Soon, our daughter was born. We were deliriously happy. I was on cloud nine, working, doing most of the housework, helping with the baby. It was all a joy, and I didn't even notice the exhaustion. My wife called me a perpetual motion machine, and it was true. I had endless energy to care for her and our daughter. Eventually, I landed a stable, well-paying job. I dressed my wife in the finest clothes, bought her a car, moved us to a bigger apartment, and we vacationed by the sea every year. I filled our free time with outings, nature trips, movies, skiing, ice skating, anything to keep my girls from ever feeling bored. Looking back, it felt like our ship had finally come in and we deserved it. 14 years passed in what I thought was marital bliss. Our daughter grew up little by little. Family always came first for me. Everything was for my loved ones. I never felt my life was mundane or monotonous. We never fought out of respect. I avoided even giving her reasons to be upset. If something minor bothered her, I was the first to compromise. I made sure she always felt cherished. Not a day passed without me telling her how much I loved and valued her. Even when money was tight, I found ways to surprise her: flowers, gifts, little girly trinkets. She loved it. Our intimate life was healthy too. I wasn't conservative, and I believed we were completely open and trusting. I was attentive to her desires, and she always said she was satisfied. As for jealousy, I never felt it. She gave me no reason, even though she worked in a male-dominated military environment. My job sometimes took me on short business trips, 1.5 to 2 weeks, and I always eagerly anticipated coming home to her. She welcomed me warmly every time. Then, like something out of a bad joke, it happened. Once, I flew out for work but got a message during a layover that the assignment was canceled, so I returned home early. I landed in our city during the day, bought a huge bouquet of roses and champagne, and decided to surprise her without warning. By my calculations, she was still at work and our daughter was in school. I took a taxi home, tried unlocking the door, but it was bolted from the inside. Well, so much for the surprise, I thought. I rang the bell, no answer. Knocked, called out, nothing. I started to panic, even considered calling the police. Finally, her voice came from behind the door. "Who's there?" "It's me, honey," I said. "You scared me. The trip was canceled." I wondered if she was asleep or sick. Then she opened the door and I didn't recognize her. Her eyes were alien, looking right through me. I stepped inside and saw a military officer sitting in our living room. Only then did I notice my wife was in a robe, nothing underneath. Suddenly, I understood. Calmly, she said, "You're bleeding." I looked down. I clenched the roses so hard the thorns had pierced my palms. My legs trembled violently, and I sank to the floor. Words can't describe what I felt: suffocating, thoughts spinning like a tornado. I couldn't believe this was happening to me. My wife wasn't capable of this. She said, "We need to talk. I hope you won't make a scene. He's not to blame." I couldn't even stand, let alone argue. If rage had taken over, I might have done something irreversible. Thank God I didn't. I didn't see him slip out. She knelt before me, crying. These things happen in life. Fragments of her confession stuck. I can't live like this anymore. I'm so confused. I need to confess. You're good. I'm terrible. I don't deserve you. Then she detailed every affair. At first, I thought she was trying to destroy me. The first time was with her ex-husband. Early in our relationship, she'd sought him out to show him what he'd lost. Then a military medic during a training course. Out of pity, he was romantic, just divorced, recited poetry. Then another doctor, then another, culminating with the man I'd just seen. Their affair had lasted a month. She claimed she'd wanted to end it but hadn't in time. When she finished, I asked why. She sobbed, saying she couldn't explain, just uncontrollable passion, no excuse. The choice to forgive or leave was mine. She swore that if I forgave her, she'd be faithful until death. For days, I barely slept or ate. At work, colleagues asked if I was ill. I turned black. At home, I lay staring at the ceiling, drenched in cold sweat at night, chain-smoking. I didn't drink. She cried, begged for forgiveness. I had no words, just silence, numbness. Later, I tried to talk, to say I still loved her, but my throat closed up. 6 months passed. I replayed our life in my head, blaming myself. Maybe I'd failed her somehow. I distanced myself emotionally and physically. The thought of intimacy with her terrified me. I felt inadequate, ashamed. We spoke only of daily life. I focused on our daughter, now entering adolescence, shielding her from the truth. None of this was her fault. Eventually, the raw pain dulled. One day, I told my wife I didn't resent her, loved her just as much, and would still walk through fire for her. But something in me had changed. I just didn't know what yet. I asked her to promise that if life with me ever became unbearable, she'd tell me straight away. I wouldn't hold her back. Life was too short to waste. We reconciled, but things weren't the same. I struggled with impotence, which only deepened my self-loathing. 6 more years passed. Family remained my priority, and I stopped questioning whether she was faithful. She was still beautiful, smart, a perfect homemaker and mother. Yes, I'd forgiven her, but something inside me had shattered. My unshakable fortress had collapsed like a house of cards. The poison had seeped into my bones. Over time, I became a different person. The true meaning of betrayal is that everything changes, you change. I'd smile bitterly, remembering my younger self trekking through war zones to fund our daughter's conception. Back then, my gear had a quote, "What doesn't kill us makes us stronger." Then suddenly, the weight I'd carried for so long lifted. It was strange. Why hadn't I changed my life sooner? I'd always been an optimist, believing things would work out. And they had, but something vital had vanished, the very thing that gave our marriage meaning, the drive that kept me moving forward. My stubborn sense of duty had told me walking away would be my betrayal. But one morning, I woke up and realized my internal transformation was complete. I'd been living someone else's life for years. My wife slept beside me. I studied her face and realized I no longer knew this woman. That day, I left the house, turned off my phone, and wandered the city, roads, and woods. It felt light, like a bird freed from a cage, as if I'd paid in full for every mistake. That evening, I told her. We talked for hours, no accusations. She cried, saying she'd expected this. Strangely, I felt no pity. I explained my perspective. She shared hers. She kept apologizing. I told her I'd forgiven her long ago, but I wasn't the man she'd married anymore. We'd been together almost 23 years. The first 15 until that day, I'd lived only for her and our daughter. The last 8? I barely remembered. I never once reproached her. I bore it all inside. But over time, my understanding of everything shifted. I realized staying married was a waste of time. Our daughter was grown, nearly out of the nest. My wife accepted it. I think she knew we'd been drifting apart for years, just going through the motions. Objectively, there had been good times. Back when I was oblivious, I'd been happy. We divorced. I explained everything to our daughter. She was old enough to understand. We still meet more often than I see my ex-wife. Life goes on. The echoing emptiness in my soul has finally quieted. I have no steady partner now. I'm afraid to, and I don't want one. Now I know for sure what doesn't kill us immediately makes us stronger.